In the workplace, you're forced to deal with multiple personalities, sometimes in the same person. Well, different personalities and work styles can lead to disagreements and tons of arguing. But before you think of letting two warboats go, the boss must find ways to resolve that conflict. I'm Kalilah Reynolds, and it's time for another episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with EXIM Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. My guest today is Assistant General Secretary at Bustamante Industrial Trade Union, Collin Virgo. Hi, Collin. Thanks for joining me.
How are you doing, stranger?
Well, this should be interesting, and there's so much to talk about. But let's start with conflict resolution, because there are all kinds of personalities on the job, and they're bound to clash at some point, sometimes maybe even physically. So how do you deal with different types of personalities on the job?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Well, one of the things is that anywhere at all in life that you find yourself, you're going to find yourself with a mix of personalities. And what are the drawbacks or challenges with having a mix of personalities? A mix of personalities guarantees you certain things. One, just like Tropical Storm Grace a few days ago, unpredictable. There, you might have a co-worker, a boss, a customer even, who under normal circumstances you have interacted with a lot. You probably know them fairly well and what have you. And they're normally a cool, calm and collected person. And then one day, they're just off. Right? Somebody having a bad day, somebody dealing with issues in their personal life, or there's a trigger. Right? So for example, the sound of a pipe dripping sometimes doesn't affect some persons. They wouldn't even notice it. And I can tell you that there are some persons, the sound of a pipe dripping drives them crazy. And they might not even recognize that it does. So it's useful to be mindful of the persons that are around us, whether they are our boss, whether it's a co-worker, whether it's a customer. And what we should at all times try to do is to err on the side of caution. Right? So if you want, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should walk through the place and be completely paranoid and whatever. That's crazy. But at the same time, at all times, be charitable in your language. Be mindful of how we approach persons. It is better that they are having a bad day, but at the end of the day, they can look back and say, well, boy, really and truly, Kalilah wasn't rude to me, or she didn't provoke me, right? I was just having a bad day. Then you allow yourself to provoke the person, to be rude to the person, and then trigger them off.
So what are some top common types of conflicts that occur in the workplace?
Oh my goodness.
Sure you've heard them, seen them all.
Long before I went in the trade union movement, my late friend Richard Portius taught me 20 years ago, the number one characteristic, in his words, the number one characteristic of Jamaican people is bad mind. That is the number one source of conflict, regardless of the industry. Sometimes there are just perceptions that people have in their minds, which eventually morph into their reality. So they believe that this is happening in the workplace, that you are being treated better than them, or you think that you are better than them, or some rubbish of the sort.
So then let's try undermine you on the job.
Oh, worse than that sometimes. As a matter of fact, that's in the instances where what they try to do to you is limited to the job. Even I myself have been a victim of it before, so I know. I know.
So what type of, so people would physically harm others?
Well, fortunately, nobody tried that with me. But and everywhere you go to, you have some people who I like to term mischief makers, right? So you have some people too who they thrive off conflict.
Yes.
Right? So they will literally go to their bed tonight, lie down and think and say, what can I do tomorrow to cause havoc in the workplace between person A and person B? Or sometimes they haven't even decided who yet, right? But, they always say that the devil find work for idle hands. So some people who clearly don't have enough work to do, they come to work and they set the stage, right, so that they can generate a conflict.
All right,
within
so
the place.
Collin, how do we deal with these issues?
There's a rule of thumb in dealing with even any industrial relation dispute in general. Always treat each case on its own merit. So there's no one size fits all. There's no one rule for everything. So when you find yourself in a situation where there's a conflict, usually one of the best things that you can do at first is to try to steer clear of it. Right? Out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes, obviously, that is unavoidable. By the way, bear in mind too that some conflicts are generated from sexual harassment, or the desire to. Right? So from time to time, you might find a co-worker or even a boss, right, who gets into a state of conflict with another employee because they see them, they like them, they're interested in them. The person is not interested and they refuse to get the message, or they refuse to accept it, and then the environment, the relationship deteriorates into a toxic state. If you can avoid it, avoid it. The other thing that you have to do sometimes it gets to a stage where you have to confront the issue. Don't take the word confront out of context. Confront the issue, not the individual. As a matter of fact, your best bet, usually, is to find a neutral third party who can mediate in the matter. I have found that in the majority of instances that works, especially in those instances, which are many, where what was the source of the conflict was never real. It was imagined. Sometimes, depending on the individual, you don't even really need a mediator. You can sit down and have a reasoning with somebody, But
should ideally the boss be the one to be the mediator, or somebody else?
And what you do when the boss is the source of the conflict. So a neutral third party is always best.
But there are
Like you can do to change
mediations,
that.
like professional mediation
Absolutely.
services that can help.
Absolutely. Or even...
So if you find yourself as the boss in that position and you don't want to take this, you have two very highly valued employees, and you feel like if you ask HR or somebody else
sometimes it's not even the most valued employee.
Sometimes
but anyway.
not, but even if you ask somebody internally to deal with it,
That's right.
You still might not want to have the impression that they took a side. You can go to somebody outside the company.
Sure. And sometimes that's the safest route. And also, it's usually good when it is somebody who has a little bit of experience in dealing with conflicts, especially workplace conflicts, because workplace conflicts are similar to, but different from family life conflicts, personal space, neighbor to neighbor conflict. They are similar in many, many ways, but best believe they are different.
So once you confront the issue, what's the next step?
All right, so there's no one cap fits all. So you wanna look at each individual situation in its own cause. So if it is a case where the source of the conflict was those people I like to term as mischief makers, right? When that is identified, then that matter is much easier to resolve, because you would have identified the source of the conflict, and you would have identified further through a neutral third party, hopefully, right? Or at the very least, a mediator in the matter, even if it's not necessarily somebody quote unquote neutral, but through another co-worker, preferably somebody in management, right? Or somebody external to the company altogether. You have identified the source of the problem, the source of in that instance of the misconception, right? The mediator in that case, though, has a responsibility to ensure that both parties extend the olive branch, right? You apologize, shake, and move on, right? Let's forget it. But also, also in that case, you do to have to deal with the source of the problem. Because if they deal with each case on its own merit, right? And if you need an external party, that's usually the safest route. If you need somebody from management to intervene, that's usually the safest route. Don't make no other coworker come tell you nothing. Say this is how this go, this is how that go, right? Approach the matter with no preconceived notions. And sometimes, right? It's my social media handle for all these years. Humble calf. Humble calf suck the most milk. Sometimes you must just humble yourself. Right? Humble yourself and approach calmly. Right? The Bible was never wrong. A soft answer turneth away wrath. Grievous words will stir up anger.
And on that note, thank you so much for joining us, Collin. Good, wise words.
Thank you so much for having me.
And here's a recap of some of Collin's key points. Be mindful of mischief workers in the workplace and avoid them. Treat each case on its own merit. If the situation gets out of control, it's best to confront the issue and not the individual. Find a mutual third party who can mediate. Sometimes it doesn't even need to go to mediation. Both individuals can meet up and discuss their issues. Many times it's not even that serious when the root of the problem is discovered.
That's it for this episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with EXIM Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. Visit their website at eximbankja.com and visit my website, KalilahReynolds.com, for a summary of this episode. You can click the link in the description box below. I'm Kalilah Reynolds. Until next time.
Let's get this money.